Just like that, I finished Castle of the Coast. Totally did not tear up. That was an amazing game. I feel like there needs to be more, and I hope there's more. Inspired by the mascot of Valley Children's Healthcare. Shouts to them. Hello guys, Vince right here, and I just finished Castle on the Coast on PC, and yeah, here I am talking about it. And I know this game was released like 2 years ago or something like that, but I just finished it since this was kind of like recommended by who was it that recommended me this game? Nitro Red. Since I'm sub to him, I kind of been, recommended with a whole bunch of good platformers. Stuff that he likes, that I like. And it's good to actually, somewhat be more in the community of 3D platformers and ones that I never heard of, like this game. So basically, if there's something about any game as well, I mean, I just have to know a little bit of the background. That's why I saw a review here and there. And there was criticisms about this game. And I can tell you this, that in no ways I have that, I know that my life can go either both ways or something like that. I don't have like, the distaste to ever disrespect a game that is meant for kids, that is basically created for kids that are from hospital. And also, if you paid for the game, you will support, these, you know, the hospital, the healthcare, basically. Because what the game is that George, the giraffe, it's a giraffe. It's the mascot for this healthcare hospital in California. I'm not sure where in California. Okay, me being in California, this place is too big to know like where and where what. But it's basically about a giraffe just doing parkour and being there for the kids. I couldn't help but think, because here's the thing. I understand what orphans go through. I actually seen many representations of it. I'm not an orphan, but I was close to people that were, and I have a very soft heart for many orphans, or just the idea of it, that I couldn't help but feel like it hurts. And that's why I just couldn't, I'm easily persuaded when it comes down to feelings. And for a game like this, though it's not perfect for some people that says it, because I was looking at this review, and I'm not gonna name names. I was watching this review about this game, and I understand where he's coming from, but I couldn't help but really be cruel when it comes down to a game that has the representation of actual real orphans. Because it's about the kids in this castle in the coast, that George the giraffe just seems to have his own ship or something. I guess that's his form of transportation. Like that's his own Tesla or whatever. Well, not a Tesla, that would be electric boat. Anyways, yeah, he sailed there out of nowhere. You kind of like start off in some separate area or something for a tutorial, and you go to, pretty much it cuts to, where George sails to a random castle or whatever, and that is the castle on the coast. And it's basically about like how the kids weren't, or basically like aren't getting along inside a castle that is, teaching wizards. And this is the part where kind of saddens me, because the way that other people put it when they reviewed this, I was like, oh, that, well, damn, because it's about these kids that actually had mentors, that had like what, mothers or fathers or something, and they go off to fight like some ginormous beasts, or freaking, I don't know, like some, it's, let's just call it like a ginormous beast. It was something. It was something that they were trying to fight, and the thought, and pretty much the question that has never been answered, is basically like, are they okay? Is the parents alive? Are they still fighting the beasts? And that question is unknown till this day. And as the kids grow up, they either become orphans, or they still like have parents out there like, oh, they're probably like, oh, his mom and dad is still out there, still fighting. They're gonna be back soon. And I couldn't help but feel like, damn, because this game is based like probably of that hospital. And I don't know much about. Listen, you think I'm anywhere near of knowing the healthcare system at all? Barely. Okay, that's why I could have. I guarantee you, I probably wouldn't have the time I have to play games if I was in the healthcare system. There's a part of me where I could have chose that because right now I do need the money, but y- I honestly don't know what the hospital is really is. I didn't really do much research on that end when it comes down to the hospital, and I believe that the hospital sort of represents the story itself of just like these orphans that are living in this castle, like these kids that are probably orphans, I believe. I could be wrong, that are living in the hospital. And there's a part of me where I felt sad by that. I always understand, like, the idea of, being in a foster's home can be rough. And this sort of like shows a representation of it, at least the way I kind of think of it. Because yes, we can get into the whole platforming, the collectible, and if anything, listen, any 3D platformers that I like, I love it. Okay, I pretty much jokingly call out like, "Oh man, this is from this game, this is from that game," but if anything, it's kind of like a mixture of so many things that really gets kids started on knowing what a game is, and especially how easy it is because you get a jetpack, really soon. I'm like, what the heck I need a jetpack for? Even though like it takes a certain amount of times to actually power that jetpack before it runs out. It's made for kids. It's made for these kids that, kind of like really like this games. And for me, I like this games because it sort of reminds me of a kid. I grew up playing tree platformers for the longest time. And I'm hoping that these kids would actually get the best of it. And not saying that whatever it is when it comes down to sharing my thoughts of any gameplay, because this is basically what every review that I ever done is is just sharing my thoughts. It's giving you like I guess, at least in my head, a human to human kind of conversation of like this game or this movie or this album or this, yada yada and stuff like that. And I guess it sort of, it translated roughly once I get to the recording bit of it. Because if I'm not recording, I could have give you a very philosophical of looking at this game or something like that. But since now I just press the recording button, all I'm automatically like and I just hate that because there's something in my heart that I really love about this game. It just brings me into a certain place when playing the levels and just the whole platforming deal of just like a parkouring giraffe with a jetpack and going places because it gets loopy. It gets like freaking loopy in this game. Like where there's like parts of it where I'm just like tripping on like LSD or something, but then I'm thinking really hard about it and I'm like, man, kids be having crazy imaginations that you would think it's all LSD, but it's all just crazy imaginations, just colorful goodness. And I guess in an adult perspective, is very different. Either it's funny or it's like we're serious because we tend to be very different from kids for the most obvious reasons, but also in the idea of like games we play and how we approach them or how I approach them compared to a 6-year old playing this game and just having the moment of it, his or her life while I'm playing this. And I'm just like, man, getting to the levels, getting the collectibles, and being reminded of what made games enjoyable in the first place. I truly love this game. I mean, pretty much, it's not perfect. It's pretty dumbed down, easy, and just like I feel like you've seen many platformers like this in the Switch probably, but I enjoyed it because of it. There's some criticisms of the story, and I'm not going to get into spoilers. I know the ending is not for everyone. The ending was everything. Understand that I grew up actually watching MLP and pretty much knowing the whole idea of friendship and blah, 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 and stuff like that. The ending was everything. The idea of just like apologizing and just understanding that we may not get along. I have a couple of friends that I had in the past that I did not get along with, and I basically pull a Vendrick, if you know what I mean. That I just decided not to be with them at all, just not at all. And I maybe at some point, if we do cross paths, I kind of in
realistic terms. If I ever, if they ever see me and I see them and they approach me, have to come up with a very like vulnerable and reasonable um stance of just saying like, "Hey man, how's everything?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, everything's doing good," as if nothing happened, and that's just human nature itself. This game itself really showcased like a much more realistic path of just like how these kids communicate, and the older ones arguing with you know the younger ones and not getting along here and there. And you kind of see that with, basically the Vendrick and Alejandra in a sense, where, because of someone bullied Alejandra that got into Vendrick's bad side because that's his sister. And yeah, just pretty much everything was never the same. And pretty much I couldn't imagine how things would be different if George didn't come by, which I feel like George didn't need to at all when it comes to this. I feel like as they grow up, it would take longer, but also, that you kind of have to be together knowing that if the beast ever comes there, and we know, which is sad to think about. I'm just thinking like, damn, if the beast dealt with the parents, they got to deal with the kids. Okay, I'm having dark thoughts, okay? But if, like, it feels like it's more reasonable to have like this freaking jumping giraffe just here in this game. And there's a part of me where I appreciate that, because the giraffe in a sense really represents a, a plushie toy a plushie toy named George the giraffe. And these kids kind of look for comfort through this toy in a sense that is trying to comfort these kids, especially Alejandra not having the comfort to actually have that, as George tried, to comfort her, but it took a while. It took a minute. And pretty much later on, things do get better and you grow up. And I guess that's the cycle of life of how it is when it comes to really growing up. And, just it's better to have someone there instead of being your own parent, because that's just not possible. And I I love that about this game. I don't know what it is, but when it comes down to just what orphans go through, you couldn't imagine. Maybe I'm saying that because I'm privileged to have parents, but I sometimes think like, man, what about the others that couldn't? Because I speak to them. I'm not gonna, pretty much shout them out or anything, but I spoke to them and they tell me a lot of how painful it is to not have their mother or father recognize them. And you kind of just wonder, you kind of just think to yourself, like, how heartless can parents be? But this is different. Are the parents going to be alive later on once they reach the castle? And I just couldn't help but think, like, I wish there was more. I wish there was like a bit more of this game in terms of like, you know, what happened to the parents? Where's George gonna go next? Is there gonna be another game surrounding George? And I think I think about more of like what's later on story wise than the gameplay and everything else. The gameplay was amazing. It is weird to see a giraffe because giraffes are big and they're usually not that portable when it comes down to, or mobile when flips and doing freaking like stunts and whatever. And I'm just like, okay. I mean, hey, at least George isn't the right size, not a realistic giraffe, but it's the right size of giraffe to actually do all these tricks. And you get to play as different characters. You don't need to play as George. You actually have like different, but it's more reasonable to play as George because I guess it's more. You kind of get more used to it later on in the game. But yeah, out of anything else, what this game gives is I feel like it's just everything that I can ever ask for of a platformer. It's perfect. Okay, if I have to give you like quick, you know, sort of opinion of this of the gameplay itself, it's perfect, even though it doesn't need to be. But it's just like it brings me into a good place. And I appreciate for this game, doing something for just kids in the healthcare. It's not easy to actually have the heart to actually really care about, all hospitals that, but this is kind of just different. This hospital that made a game for the kids that just in support of the healthcare and the representation of the happiness and orphans surrounding it. It's everything. But other than that, yeah, that's just my thoughts of the game. Some people might, I don't believe people have like, are this cruel to have the this hard to say like, oh, how dare you, you freaking softy boy talking about, like story life and poor orphans or whatever. I don't think people are that cruel to actually just understand where I'm coming from. That sometimes think very differently from others, maybe because of my disability, but also that I just like to have a bigger outlook when it comes down to games, movies, or everything else, because I like to be individual when it comes to my review or my thoughts about it. I guess to me, or maybe there's a lot of things missing, but I don't freaking care because you're seeing a YouTuber that has fallen off that's basically trying its best just to make content that I enjoy. So, I'll just leave it at that. Anyways, definitely check out this game. It's definitely worth it. I love it. I truly do. So shouts to the healthcare system of whatever this game is from. I forget the name in a moment. I apologize. But big shouts to George Giraffe. It's a good time. One love and peace, and yeah, God bless.